First of all, thank you for all of you joining this Tuesday evening, our Takeoff and Take sessions, number 1 in 2022. Today we have two great speakers, Andrew and Jairus, and we will be covering Scrum, Agile, and some personal experience how to work in a smaller and bigger teams. And this main purpose of Takeoff and Tech sessions to allow our Zuhlke professionals to share their knowledge, and sharing is caring. So thank you. Our first speaker is Andrew. He started his experience as engineer, but switched to project management, and right now he's our guru in Scrum and Agile. He has been coaching a lot of bigger projects. So over to you, Andrew.
Thank you very much, Crimsy. Right, I'm just going to share my screen. Let me know when you can see it. Hang on.
Sure.
So I need to do that. Click that button, and then need to do that, do that, do that. Okay, share screen. Perfect. Let me know when you can see it.
Yes, we can see.
Perfect. Well, hello everybody. My name is Andrew, and I'm going to do a quick session on life as a Scrum Master. So a little bit about me. So I've been at Zuhlke since February 2020. So just before COVID hit. So that's an interesting time to have joined. This is actually taken from the slide I did when I joined to show everybody. So I'm originally from the UK. Hopefully you might be able to tell by my accent. That picture in the middle there is from where I'm from, a place called Exeter in Devon in the UK. I've also done a lot of work around Scrum and things like that. I'm SAFe certified as well. Couple of things about me. So on the right there, some pictures of that's me in Las Vegas. My wife took that picture driving a NASCAR. I went to the Grand Canyon in 2019. Seems like a long time ago that I could travel. And I'm quite into sport, so that's what my pictures are there. So that's a little background of me. Like I say here, add me on LinkedIn, and also feel free to contact us if you're interested in joining Zuhlke at some point. Cool. So moving on. So what we're going to cover. So start with typical problems in software projects. I'll then quickly, so I'm going to give an overview of this stuff. It's not going to be really in depth. It's going to be an overview. So typical problems in software projects, the Agile Manifesto, the Scrum framework, what's it like being a Scrum Master, and other things that are going on. And there's other slides in there as well. So first thing is a question to wake everybody up. Has anyone worked on a project that has gone wrong? So there should be a poll in the there's a poll open, and Crimsy, you might need to help me with where I can see that, to see how many people have worked in a project that's gone wrong. And Crimsy, you there?
Yes, it's 100 people has worked.
Cool. How do I see the result?
Can you see that now?
That you generally get from these sort of projects. So I don't know whether you can still see my screen. Maybe you can. So I'll carry on. Typical problems you get. So generally I would call this old ways of working, that you would you do your estimates at the start of the project, which means that by the end the estimates are probably wrong. The business process owners are not close enough to the team to answer questions. So you may have seen that before, where the person who's in charge of the product you're building is in another building, or is very difficult to get hold of. The big one, the product that is built doesn't give the customer what they want, and that's quite a big one. You hear that, you probably hear that a lot, and it's difficult to change along the way, and change happens all the time. So that's probably another thing you've probably seen. You're in a project, halfway through something changes. What do you do? So there are answers to these questions. That's where Agile comes in. So this is why I kind of when I started on my Agile journey, those are the problems that I was seeing, and actually Agile, the way we work with Agile helps with this, which is great. So I'm going to give a very quick overview now of a few things. So first off, the Agile Manifesto. So this was a group of about 20 people who were in a ski lodge, and they came up with what they saw as what Agile meant to them. So they called it the Agile Manifesto. And the line at the top there is really important. So the items on the right are important, but we value the items on the left more. So take that in. So we're not saying the items on the right when I give you this, when we go through this, isn't important, but we prefer the items on the left. We're more interested in those. So number one, individuals, interactions over processes and tools. So yes, you do need processes and tools, but it's much better to be able to talk to each other and interact to solve problems. Comprehensive documentation over working software. So yeah, we need some documentation, but wouldn't working software be better? You know, we want to take that out to the customer. Customer collaboration over contract negotiation. Let's not spend all our time negotiating contracts. Let's actually work with the customer to get the result. And responding to change to following a plan. So yes, we can follow a plan, but wouldn't it be better to change if things need changing? So that's, well, now it's about 20 years old. And one of the couple of the people who signed that built what we now know as the Scrum framework. And no doubt you've heard of this if you've worked in any software project that's using the word Agile in it. You generally use Scrum, and there's also Kanban out there, but generally Scrum is the one that everyone uses. So couple of things first. So I'm gonna go very, very quickly on some of the theories around here. So Scrum is built on empiricism and lean thinking. So number one, empiricism, what does that mean? So I struggled with this word a lot, so I thought I'd write it down here so that I could tell you. So empiricism asserts that knowledge comes from experience and making decisions based on what is observed. So what that means in practice is, let's do something, see how it works, and then make a decision on what to do next. And let's change as we can. And also lean thinking, so that's reducing waste and focusing on the essentials. So if you think of the Agile Manifesto, these two lines fit quite nicely into that. I put a reference on here to the Scrum Guide with where Scrum theory is, but I've got a page at the very end with all of these links on there. So that's from the Scrum Guide. So Scrum also has 3 pillars: transparency, inspection, and adaptation. So there are 3 pillars of Scrum and what you need to be able to run Scrum. Before I go into too much depth on those, another poll that should be available, hopefully. Yeah, what is more? Here it is. What is more important to you? Transparency, inspection, or adaptation? So everyone could quickly vote. Okay. So we got 33% voted. Okay, so I'll give you 2 more seconds to vote if you haven't already. There we go. Cool. So interesting. So 67% of you said adaptation, 33% of you said transparency. If I was to pick one, I'd probably pick transparency. But to be fair, they're all as equal as important as each other. So transparency, you need to show everybody what's going on and be able to show everyone what's going on. You know, because then there's no ambiguity in what's going on if everyone can see what's going on. Inspection. So we do something as a team, as a group of people. How do we make ourselves better? Let's inspect that. Inspect what we're doing, and then at the end you adapt. So you say, well, we've inspected, we've seen this, and now we're adapting. So it was a bit of a false question. They're all as important as each other, but you know, everyone generally has a preference, and I will no doubt be saying transparency a lot towards the end of this presentation. Cool. Okay. So what I'm going to quickly do is give you a quick, probably 5-minute overview of the Scrum framework. I'm not going to be able to go into too much detail, but there's a number of ceremonies and there's a number of people working in the team. So I'll do the people working in the team in a second. But now let me quickly go through what this diagram is, which is how Scrum works. So what I would think about building a house. Okay, so think about building a house. You need to build a house. You have a load of things you need to do. So the first thing on the left here is the product backlog. If you're building a house, what do you need to do to build a house? You need to build the foundations. You need to put the windows in. You need to put some walls in. You need to put the roof on. All those things. So there's a load of stuff you need to do. Okay. You then build that down to a sprint backlog. So that is in the sprint, which is a 2 to 4 week piece of work. So in 2 to 4 weeks, what can we achieve? So as a team, you go to sprint planning, which is the first ceremony, and you say, right, we can achieve, we think this much in 2 to 4 weeks. It depends on how you want to set yourself up. I think of that was building a house. So you talk to each other and go, well, actually, we need to start with the foundations, and we need to start with digging up the ground, etc., etc. So that would be your first sprint. Let's dig up the ground, and you'd work out how long it took you. You then go into the sprint, which is every 2 to 4 weeks, and from that daily, you would have what we call a daily scrum. Some people call it daily stand-up, but that is where you would daily say, what did we achieve yesterday? What are we achieving today? And work as a team on a plan to how you're going to achieve it. And how are we today going to work towards achieving what we said we do in the backlog? So that's what the daily scrum is. It's a quick 15-minute session just to say where we are, what we're doing. And then there's three more things over here on the right. So the potentially shippable product increment. So if you're building a house, we said we build the foundations in the first sprint. That's your shippable increment in software. Obviously, it's a piece of software. It's a web page. It's whatever. You might not go live with it, so you wouldn't move into the house straight away. You need to build more stuff before you put it live. But in theory, you could. You have a review. So with the stakeholders who you're working with, you say, this is what we've done. This is what we've achieved. What do you think? Any concerns? Anything we need to change? And that kind of thing. And then you have your retrospective, which is the inspect and adapt part of the thing we just talked about. So together you say, well, what went well? So if you're building a house, you might say, well, my spade to dig the ground wasn't good enough. Okay, we'll buy a new one. Very basic example there, but yeah. And then anything that comes on the right side that needs to change goes back into the backlogger here on the left, and then we carry on. So that's a very, very high level view of the Scrum framework. I'm now going to quickly go into the people that make up the team. As I said before, this is going to be very, very high level view. Lots more details to dig into after this session. So, okay, so product owner, really important role. They're all important roles. So the product owner's role is optimizing the value of the product being built. So as you can see in this diagram here, the product owner talks with the stakeholders and says, what do we need to do? What do we need to build? So if you're building a house, they would say, okay, what sort of house do you want? What do you want it made of brick? Do you want it made of wood? They make recommendations. They'd say, well, we want a 4-bedroom house. Okay, we'll add it to the backlog. So they maintain the product backlog. Generally, it's one person, and they're available. Really important, they're available. So this transparency thing, it's all about everyone being available to each other. Ideally, the product owner has profit and loss accountability, so they're there to make sure the money's spent wisely as well. Cool. Development team. Okay, these are the people doing the work. They are self-organizing. They're also cross-functional. So they, at the start of the sprint, agree on the work that they can achieve with the product owner. They say, this is what we can achieve. They're also self-organizing. You don't have a project manager, get it right, saying, okay, you're going to work on this bit, you're going to work on that bit, you're going to work on this bit. They together decide who works on what and how they work. And it's really important that it's a small team, so 3 to 9 members, and it creates the work that comes out the end. So in building the house, they're the ones who put the foundations in. And it's a culture of learning and collaboration. So we should always be learning, inspecting and adapting and collaborating. We should also be very transparent of where we are. Okay, and then the Scrum Master, which is what the title of this is a servant leader. So that means that rather than telling people what to do, you help people when they need help. So Scrum Master's main role, it's got two real main roles. One is to make sure we're following the Scrum processes. So make sure we're doing stand-ups, retros, team stand-ups, retros, reviews, planning all correctly, and making sure that the daily stand-up happens on a daily basis. So that's one of the things to do. They're there to teach the team on how to do that effectively. The other one is to remove impediments, and this is really important. This is really important when you start to get into big organizations that have got a lot of dependencies on each other. So clearing those dependencies is really important, and any issues the teams have got, how to fix them, because you'll end up waiting weeks for things otherwise. So when you start getting to really big organizations, you need to be really thinking about these things. Like I said servant leader, they're not there to tell people what to do, they're there to help people. Really important that. So if you're in a team where the Scrum Master is telling you what to do and how to do it, probably not doing it right. And they manage process, not people, like I just said. Okay, right, so that is very high level view, very high level view of what Scrum is. There's loads more resource out there. I've got some links at the end of the presentation. So and also ask a few questions. I'll see if I can answer them. Okay, moving on to the next one. So what's it like being a Scrum Master? Okay, so when I was asked to do this, I thought I'd just write some stuff down of what I think it's like being a Scrum Master. So here's what I've gone with. So I've been a Scrum Master now been doing sort of Scrum Mastery, Agile roles now probably 10 years or so. Not always just as a Scrum Master, sometimes as a developer as well originally, and done a bit of PO work and all that kind of stuff on the way. So a little bit of everything. But this is what I think is like being a Scrum Master. You've got to listen to people. It's all about human interactions. So if you're a Scrum Master and telling people what to do, you're not doing it properly. You should listen to people and ask them how to help, how you can help them. So that's really important. Treat others how you wish to be treated rather than telling them what to do. Finding the right person in the organization can take time. So especially if you work in a big organization, it can take time to find the right people and solve problems. Important in this one is transparency. You know, you might have deadlines. You know, we're working in Agile, but people generally put the deadlines on things. So you want to just be honest and say, this is where we are. Can't find a person. Can you help? Can anyone else help? We can't solve that problem. Like I said just then, depending on the organization, some will still use old ways of working in certain areas. So you have to factor that in as a Scrum Master. You're there to help the team deliver and help solve their problems. So if you can go and clear an impediment by getting a team that works in an older way of working, put something on their roadmap, on their plan, and get a date when it's going to be done. You know, it's not the way you want to be working, but you know, if that's the way they work, you've got to be pragmatic and make that happen. Another one that's interesting if you work in a highly regulated environment, how do you put something live? So as a Scrum Master, you won't be the one doing it, but you need to help your team to do that. Really important, that kind of thing, because if it's not going live to the client, why are you doing the work? So the end user getting something live is really important here. It doesn't, you can write all the documentation in the world about what you've built, but if it hasn't gone live, who's benefiting from it? Well, how's the company making anything from the work and the money they're spending on your team? Visualize everything. So what's really important is partly why I've got a whiteboard that side, behind me, and I've got one in front of me as well. You won't be able to see, but it's really important to visualize what's going on. So lots of tools out there for this. When we used to be in the office, you'd have a big whiteboard, and you could have high-level sprint plans on the wall. You can see the work that's being done, and there's lots of tools out there for this. Things like Jira. There's a few other ones out there. Really important. And the final one that you have to try and there's lots of politics and there's lots of people doing things, but you're there to help people. Really, you're there to make the Scrum work and to help people. So always think to yourself, how can I help? Now, what is getting in the way of people delivering? So that's really important. You've got to have that human side to you, as we said at the top. Okay, so please do ask a load of questions on that. I'll see if I can answer them with my opinion. Okay, next one, Mythbuster. So I did steal this slide from someone else, but rewrote it slightly, so I don't feel too bad showing it. So there's a few myths about Agile, and a lot of people say things like, I'm going to start in the middle there. Agile is anti-documentation. Agile says, don't do any documentation. Don't do it. Not true. It just values releasing stuff to the customer more than documentation. So you might need to write a wealth of documentation to go live, for example, but it's necessary and sufficient. You need to do it, but don't sit there and write loads and loads of documents that are not going to see. What's the point if they're not going to go live, or you have a stand up? Why are you writing minutes for the stand up of what's going on? You know, if you've got in Jira, for example, you've got a backlog. If somebody's update in Jira, move on. Don't be writing lots and lots of documentation. Agile is undisciplined. Now, that's not true. Agile is very disciplined if you think about it. It's all about ceremonies, and it's a drive to make everything transparent. The only difference is that rather than planning, say, a year, you're planning in very small increments so that you can change and you can move when you need to. Agile is a silver bullet. Yeah, this is an interesting one. It's not, and it's really hard to make it work. If you use it correctly, it should start seeing benefits. So another thing, it's really easy to say you're doing Scrum, but it's very hard to master it. And in whatever organization you're in, because of its human interaction, products are different. You know, you're building software, things are different. The way the company works different. You know, there's no one answer. Just do this, everything's going to work. That's not where you need to start. You need to start on the reason why I was at the start of this presentation. You need to start at the transparency, the adaptation, inspection, and servant leadership, and those kind of things. You need to start there. That's where you need to start, and then you bring the Scrum framework in on top. You know, people need to buy into it. Agile doesn't scale. That's not true. I've in the next slide, I've got a few examples of large-scale solutions that are out there. I'll very quickly touch on those. I don't think we have the time to go into too much detail. Large enterprises use this. Yep, they all do. And there's banks, insurance companies, and loads of other people. Agile's anti-planning. It's not true. Again, Agile does a lot of planning, but it concentrates it in what needs to be done now, not in 6 months into the future. So in the old ways of working, you start here with the design phase, you then do the build phase, you then do the test phase, you then do the release phase. That's where the word waterfall comes from, so it looks a bit like a waterfall. Now that's not going to work if you need to change halfway through. What if you want to change here? You have to go all the way back over here and come all the way back down again. So Agile is it's all about saying we want to do what needs to be done now. We need to have an idea, but we don't need to know in detail what's happening in 6 months' time. So really, really important, that one. Okay, moving quickly on. I'm not sure how much time I've got left. I think 5 minutes or so. So I've only got a few more slides. Other Agile things you might see. So, like I said earlier, I recently become a SAFe leading. I've done some of the SAFe courses. So SAFe is a framework that's designed for enterprises and covers a lot more than the Scrum framework. So, if you see this picture on the right, which is, I'm not going to go into too much detail here, but the bits that are from Scrum are, there's a sign here that says Scrum, and there's a little bit here that says Agile Teams, which is taken from Scrum. So that's it. So what SAFe tries to do, and once you've worked in an organization that uses SAFe, what SAFe tries to do is bring a load of great ideas into how as a big enterprise, how do you deliver in an agile way? And there's lots of things like agile release trains, PI planning. Now, I'm not going to go into detail here. If anybody wants to talk about it, ping me. We can have a chat. It's fascinating where all this stuff goes. The Spotify model. You might have heard of this. So actually, it's not actually a framework or anything. It was just Spotify decided how they were going to work, and then they released the details of it, and people started adopting some of the things that are there. So they use things like guilds. You might have heard that. And you'll probably see in some companies will use bits of these two bits of Spotify and bits of Safe in their organizations. So yeah, lots of stuff there. Google it, loads of cool information on there. A few other things out there. So Scrum at Scale. So that was one of the people who wrote the Scrum Guide came up with Scrum at Scale, which was how to scale Scrum. Again, Google it. There's a lot of information how they do it. They're all these frameworks that talk about scaling, all trying to do the same thing but in different ways. So it's an interesting read. And then Nexus Scrum is another way of doing it, and that comes from one of the other people who wrote the Scrum Guide. So lots of interesting stuff there. Again, as I think I'm finishing in a second anyway, I can't go into too much detail on that. Cool. So
no worry
that's
about
a very, very high level overview. Hopefully that gives you something to see as a starting point, some ideas of how to be a Scrum Master. Yeah, so I've got a couple more slides, but the next one I thought I'd stop here and ask if there are any questions. And I believe I need to go to the question tab. Let me try that.
Yes, there are some questions, please. I have
Crimsy, you're on mute.
You.
Can't hear you.
Hello? Hello, yes. Can you hear me now? Yes, there is some questions I have assigned to you, please.
Okay, shall I just go from the top?
Yes, sure.
Okay, so the first one, how to change the mindset of a team to be more agile? Any idea or story to share based on your experience? More agile is an interesting word. What does that actually mean? Not sure. But the important thing is just to show the benefits. So, for example, if a team says, "Oh, we don't want to do all this stuff," we've got to get stuff done. Try and visualize what they're doing and make it transparent. And say, well, if we work this way, you could say, for example, they're doing too much work. For example, they're overworked, an overworked team. You could visualize it. You could visualize it and then say, well, you're doing all this work. If we spent more time planning every 2 weeks, you could actually work on what you can achieve, and you can see what you can achieve, and then you can try and improve upon it. But right now you've got a million things to do and not enough time to do it. So that's one way to do that sort of thing, is to show. It can be difficult. You've got to try your best, really. Cool. Hope that answered your question. Second one, does Scrum Master require in-depth product or industrial knowledge? Okay, so the short answer to that question is no. The longer answer is probably the more you know about the industry you're working in, the more easier it will be to help and clear blockers. For example, if you've worked in a company for 1 or 2 years and you're a Scrum Master, you'll more likely to know the right people to talk to because you've learned that. And also, if you can talk the talk that the developers talk in terms of the industry standards and things, and in businesses you always have acronyms and things that you've got to learn. So it doesn't hurt. You don't have, but it doesn't hurt to have knowledge of what's going on. So I've always found that my background in software development helps because I have a reasonable idea, although it's a little while ago now that I was actually fully developing stuff. I have a good idea of what's going on and what are the blockers to the team that you can try and solve. So, for example, if a piece of software is not available to them, for example, you can go and get that done because they need it. So yeah. So short answer is no, not really, but it doesn't. If you do, it doesn't hurt. Cool. I think that's the 2 questions. Crimsy, back to you.
Thank you, Andrew. It was very insightful sessions. Please, if you have any other questions, keep posting in chat or in question tab. I would like to introduce you our next speaker. Jairus. And
hello, guys.
Hello. Let me do some short introduction. Jairus, our Zühlke professional engineer. He has been working in different projects, bigger and smaller. And of course, he has been doing a lot of Scrum and Agile. Yeah. Over to you, Jairus.
So, hello, guys. Welcome to this episode of Takeoff in Tech. So my name is Jairus. It's also a slide I made when Zühlke introduced me to the team. I've been a web developer for about 15 years now, mostly as a front-end developer. So what front-end is so basically the UI, the pages, the components that the user sees and interacts with. So I worked with many teams and completed even more websites. Some of them have even won awards. It takes a team to create these websites, and many roles, from designers, project managers, sometimes copywriters, backend developers, front-end developers. So how large of a team do you need? Is it big? Is it small? What's the ideal size? That will be our topic for today. So we're borrowing a quote from Jeff Bezos to define what a small team is. So if you can't feed your team with 2 pizzas, it's too large. So let's start off with the small team. I want you to imagine this for a second. You enter the office. You're on a first-name basis with everyone there, and you settle into your desk to start the day. John approaches you with a front-end question. He asks you, because you're the front-end guy. You start reading emails and you see there's going to be a major change that will only affect the front end. You're not worried. It's going to be troublesome, but it's going to be easy to change. You look at the clock, it's 12. Everyone goes out to buy food and have lunch together. You're in a small team. So is the team a small team an ideal size? Let's create a pros and cons list to find out. Pros of a small team: you won't need a Jira board. I worked in a small team, and my role there was front-end developer. If there was any front-end tasks, it was mine. If there was a front-end change or a bug, it was mine. Front-end question, that's still mine. Assigning tasks in a small team is easy and efficient. Using projects software management or Scrum practices, probably Jira might have been overkill, but you could still use it, but you won't need it. Oh, that was one of the cons of being in a small team is limited technical choices. So a long time ago, in a small team, we had a project that required us to create an API service. So the API service is something that throws back data back to probably the user or another program that uses it. Our backend developer was very familiar with PHP. So he can only suggest a way that to implement the API service in a PHP. So we did it in PHP Laravel. There was no other second opinion, unfortunately. So if you've heard the saying, you don't know what you don't know, in a small team, you will have limited technical choices. So remember, guys, if you have any questions, please write them in chat. One of the pros of a small team is that it's easy to implement major changes. So just like in the story I mentioned, I once created a animated website. It used a lot of CPU. You can actually hear the fan when you ran the prototype. I'm pretty sure it killed my boss's laptop. Anyway, I suggested to the PM that we overhaul the entire website. I could make that suggestion easily because I was the only one touching the front end. So it's one of the many things that is great with a small team is that it's easy to make changes. Let's go off to the audience. It's an interactive question. Have you ever been in a team where you believe that you were the most competent person in the team? Submit yes or no. Okay. So the results are in. 38% said yes, and 63% said no. So for those of you who said yes, you might have fallen victim to the cognitive bias that is the Dunning-Kruger effect. Maybe, just maybe. In a small team, that effect is even more magnified. There's no other people in my team previously that could have given me feedback about the front end because I was the only front end guy. So that meant limited growth on my front end skills. I never really grew beyond that. In my heart of hearts, I believed I was a rock star developer. So that's bad. One of the pros of a small team is that you have better work relationships. So in a small team, it's easier to work together. You can communicate and collaborate easily. You get the chance to know everyone. It's a bit underrated, but I think it's more fun to be in a small team. So here's a picture of me and my project manager fighting bugs. Then this is a picture of us when we were moving office. We made the cardboard fort. So I guess I get to learn the people that you work with in a small team. One of the cons of a small team is limited capacity. So you only have a few individuals. You can't really carry that much. I remember this one time back in the Philippines when we were still using Flash to develop interactive websites. I was the lead and I misestimated the tasks that we were supposed to do. There was no way we were going to make our deadline. Even if we did OT, there was no way we were going to make it. So I asked the team to stay in the office for 3 days. We slept there, we ate there. So lesson learned, in a small team, don't bite off more than you can chew. So some tips for working in a small team. You need to spend some time to stay up to date. Looking back now, I wished I've learned a lot of things like how to deploy a CI/CD pipeline. That would have saved me a lot of time and effort. Sad as it is, I also didn't learn Git. It was a small team and we passed files around. That was how we got files. Sometimes we passed them over the server. We uploaded the server. That was the latest version. That was a lot of headaches. This one helps you tackle the limited technical choices that you have if you're in a small team. And you might need to carve out some time to do some self-learning. Another tip is to spend your time wisely. So it would be pointless to deploy a CI/CD pipeline and save you 10 minutes a day if you browse Reddit for 20 minutes a day. Also, try not to spend too much time on one problem. You can spend an entire day fixing a problem, and you can be finishing more tasks in that day. So guys, remember, if you have any questions, just write them in the chat. Let's now start off with a big team. We've now discussed the small team. And I want you guys to close your eyes and imagine this. You head over to your team's area in an open layout office, and you greet the guy with the large beard. Good morning. You still can't remember his name. Settle into your desk. You check to see if the pull request you've made has been approved. Nice, it has. You then proceed to stare at the Jira board that guy. You know what everybody else is doing. You take a look at what next to do. There it is, the name of the large beard dude. Everybody starts gathering in the meeting room. It's going to be the daily stand-up. You learn about what everybody is going to be up to, and maybe, just maybe, you'll get the chance to use the large beard dude's name. You're in a big team. So just like with the small team, we're going to make a pros and cons list to see if big team is an ideal team size. So what are the pros of a big team? You get more technical options. Having more heads will give you more points of views, more perspective. Unlike a small team, you can come up with more solutions. And one of those many solutions will definitely be the best solution. I've seen some innovative code and written some in big teams. One of the cons of a big team is long stand-ups. So we used to have 12 people attending a daily stand-up, and that stand-up lasted over an hour. In the end, we had to split the team into two. So all the Scrum ceremonies that Andrew talked about, like sprint planning, retrospective, refinement, all these ceremonies will take longer in a big team. So if you have any questions, guys, just drop them in the chat. One of the big pros of being in a big team is that you will grow a lot more. So I didn't even know how to use Git before I joined the big team. I didn't have the need to write code with other people. They taught me. Even the Git pull requests that I dread to perform were a learning opportunity. I needed to learn how to cleanly write code to a standard that would pass another person's scrutiny and feedback. In a large enough group, someone's bound to be smarter than you. I found mentors in big teams. I'm very thankful to them and everything that they've taught me. Cons of a big list is strangers. So it took me a while, but I eventually learned the name of the big dude with a large beard. True, I knew his face. I knew what it looked like. I even knew what he did based on the daily stand-ups. I just can't recall his name. He might even... I didn't get a chance to use his name, but it's because I didn't get the chance to spend time and getting to know all the teammates in the big team. One of the pros of a big team that I'm currently using now is someone can fill for you. So unexpectedly, my son was born last Thursday. I'm currently on paternity leave, and I'm glad that my teammate Jed can fill in for me. He's holding down the fort. Big teams means bigger capacity, and sometimes two or more people have the same role. Jed is also a front-end developer. It makes me glad that I'm in a big team right now. So won't stop just because I'm out. One of the cons in a big team is decision making is difficult for opposing opinions. So I once had a task that was very easy to do. It would just take me 2 days to implement. But that task stretched out to 2 sprints. So if a sprint is 2 weeks, it took me a month to complete that task. It was because we were arguing on what to implement. So decisions that have differing options will take longer in a big team. So what are the tips that I can give you when you're working in a big team? Try to have lunch together. So having lunch is a great way to build relationships. Anthony Bourdain once said, You learn a lot about someone if you share a meal together. Lunch is a perfect opportunity to spend time and get to know the team, all the members of the team, within working hours. You'll have to spend some time inviting them over to lunch, and some rejections sometimes, but it will all be worth it. So now that we've discussed both a big and a small team, we can try to answer the question, what is the ideal size? My answer is, it depends on what you want. If you want to be part of a fast-moving team, tightly knit, where communication and collaboration comes very easily, small team is ideal for you. If you want to hone your craft and learn from others, build very large things, big team is perfect for you. Anyway, most of the time you won't have a say in what team you join. You might just have to change how you work, depending on where you work, how you work, who you work with, and how many members in a team that you are working with. What might have worked for you in college might not work for you in your first job, and what might work for you in your first job might not work in the succeeding ones. So no matter what team you work for, big or small, adapt, learn how to do great work with the people. I will leave you with this quote from Bruce Lee. Be water, my friend. Empty your mind. Be formless and shapeless like water. If you put water in a cup, it becomes the cup. If you put water in the bottle, it becomes the bottle. If you put it in the teapot, it becomes a teapot. Be water. Now water can flow or it can crash. Be water, my friend. Thank you.
Thank you, Jairus. There is one question for you in the question tab.
Yes. Okay. So let's start answering the questions. Where do you enjoy work the most, in a big or small team? So the work itself that I enjoyed was actually in the big team, but the experience of working in a small team. So oh, that's what.
No, there is a comment that it's nice quote from Bruce Lee. Yeah. Thank you for this insightful session. Especially, I was sitting and nodding when you were talking about the smaller team and the bigger teams, cons and pros. Yep. And while there were some, the presentation happened, there were some questions. Andrew, to you regarding Scrum.
Oh, Andrew, there's some questions.
Yeah, I'm back. Jairus, there's another one for you. Do you want to answer yours first?
Oh, it's the last one.
Oh, yeah.
You mentioned splitting a big team. What worked well and what not? So we split the team into a more specialized team. So we had sales as part of the team. We just split the sales portion of the team. I think it worked. Although we lost perspectives of the salespeople. It's nice to have the perspective of sales when you're building a site that did sales.
And Andrew?
Sure. My question was, are there specific best practices for a Scrum Master working in a distributed team, working fully remote in different countries? So I don't know whether there's, I don't off the top of my head have the best practices, but I'll give my opinion. Always look back on the 3 pillars, so transparency, inspection, adaptation. Also look back on the things we discussed around empiricism and lean thinking. So so as a team that's totally distributed across the world, which happens a lot now with COVID, like this conversation we're having now, we're all in different places. It's about finding a way to work together. So team building, which you would used to do in the office by having the first meeting, having a coffee, it's not quite so easy now. So make the most of having virtual coffees, or do like we've done at Zuhlke, like a virtual escape room. My team won, by the way, and start with that. And then you really want to think about how do you visualize the work, so transparency. So rather than using a board, use a tool like Jira to visualize so everyone can see what's going on. Hope that helps.
Yep. Thank you. Thank you for this wonderful evening, Jairus and you. I myself learned a lot of things. Thank you for sharing. And if you have any questions, please reach out Jairus or Andrew in LinkedIn. And at Zuhlke, we are still hiring in Vietnam, in Singapore, all over the offices. Please reach out us for referral. Thank you. Have a good evening. Bye.